Welcome to the Minnesota Department of Education's Physical Education Standard Implementation video series. I'm Mary Thyssen-Milder, and I serve as the Physical Education Specialist at the department. The 2018 Minnesota Academic Standards in Physical Education were developed by physical educators from across the state. The Minnesota Department of Education facilitated that process and then formed a physical education standards implementation leadership team made up of the co-chairs of the MDE Physical Education Standard Development Team, executive board members of the Minnesota Society of Health and Physical Education, or MnSHAPE, leaders in adaptive physical education representing MnDAPE, and representatives of higher education. Their role is to assist MDE in designing a standard implementation professional development plan. The leadership team designed a 3-year assistance plan to support Minnesota physical educators as they plan for implementation of the standards in the 2021-22 school year. In 2019, we were in the middle of the second year of professional development when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and that put a dramatic pause on the training plan. The COVID-19 pandemic delayed the implementation of the 2018 academic standards in physical education until the 2023-24 school year. To assist teachers in reviewing the topics covered in the first year of standard implementation trainings, a Snapshots video series was created that addressed the importance of standards, introduced the new Minnesota physical education standards, and broke the standards down one by one. Videos on academic language, learning progressions, deconstructing benchmarks, and bundling benchmarks were also included. These videos can be found on the MDE or MnSHAPE websites. A teacher may watch them in order or go directly to the desired topic and can be viewed individually or in teacher teams. This video is produced as part of the continuation of the second year of standard implementation training. Every second Thursday of the month between February and June of 2022, a new video will be released that focuses on the current identified for the second year of training. The Snapshot series was released in February of 2022. The focus of this video is applying physical education standards-based assessment and grading with the release date of June of 2022. In previous videos, we discussed the purposes, types, and categories of assessments and identified national best practices and how they can be integrated into daily assessment practices. We've also identified best practices in grading and identified issues in traditional grading practices in physical education and such things as effort, behavior, improvement, classroom management concerns, and fitness testing scores. This video identifies sample scenarios that physical educators may have encountered and provides possible assessments and grading best practices solutions. We will also produce a sample unit and suggest possible formative assessments and final grading recommendations. Finally, we will address several key resources that teachers may find helpful. I will once again remind us all that assessment and grading are not the same. The purpose of assessment is to provide evidence of student learning and student achievement towards outcomes and standards. They provide feedback to students on their progress, and information and data can be used to inform instructional decision-making and inform teaching. The purpose of grading is to describe how well students have achieved the learning objectives or goals established for a class or course of study. Grades should reflect students' performance on specific learning criteria. It's also important to follow this simple rule: assess everything, but don't grade everything. Teachers don't have to include all scores in grades. A variety of assessment strategies are needed depending on the purpose. Formative assessments offer directions for improvement and adjustments during the instruction and learning process. Summative assessments provide information to make judgments about a student's achievement at the end of a period of instruction and learning. Not everything assessed needs to be graded. Determine the weight of assessments and determine which will be included as part of a grade ahead of time. Traditional physical education grading practices have included such things as student participation, student attendance, dressing out for class, and class behavior. Consider what is communicated to students and parents by these factors. What do factors like attendance and punctuality, being dressed for class, mean to students and parents? These are class managerial issues, not learning targets. It's the student's responsibility to come to class on time, dressed appropriately, and be ready to learn. These factors lower learning expectations in exchange for student compliance in a teacher managerial system. This practice is called a grade exchange, wherein teachers reduce their expectations in return for compliant behaviors. Managerial concerns should be addressed through class rules and school policies and handled administratively rather than as part of a grade. The only way to earn a passing grade should be by demonstrating certain knowledge and skills and learning targets defined in the curriculum. Building assessments to improve performance requires that grades and reports reflect our values and provide appropriate feedback. The following slides identify sample scenarios that I adapted from a presentation by Dr. Jacqueline Lund in a presentation at Shape America regarding assessment and grading practices. Here is scenario 1. You are teaching a basketball unit. In your class, you have a student, Ben, who is on the school basketball team, and a student, Tony, who has never touched a basketball. When conducting their skill assessment, Ben passes all the criteria on the first trial. Tony fails the test on the first trial, but is able to meet on the 5th trial. How are each student scored? A, both schools receive the same. B, Ben receives a higher score than Tony. Or C, Tony receives a higher score than Ben. In this situation, both students should be scored the same. The focus is not on the number of trials it takes to meet the goal. The focus is on meeting the goal. Goals need to be stated, followed by appropriate instruction, numerous practice opportunities, and chances to test and retest. In scenario 2, you are teaching a lacrosse unit. John is a standout athlete on the lacrosse team. He has perfect scores on all written and skills tests. During gameplay, John is often critical of his teammates' execution of skills, which impacts their abilities. You are assessing gameplay through a rubric aligned with standard 4 benchmark 9.4.2.1, exhibit proper etiquette, respect for others, and teamwork while engaging in physical activity. How do you assess John? A, John receives full points because of his high skill level, or B, John receives partial points because of bad sportsmanship. Assessing behavior in physical education can be problematic. However, behavior can be assessed as long as it's aligned to a specific benchmark. In this case, John is not exhibiting proper etiquette or respect for others during gameplay and should be scored accordingly on the rubric. In scenario 3, you are teaching a team soccer unit. Jenny is new to the activity and on the pre-test scores very low in skill level. David's on the school soccer team and scores high on the pre-test. Jenny's scores advance significantly during the post-test, but David's remain the same. How should each student be assessed on a skills rubric? A, both get the same score, or B, Jenny receives more points because she shows more improvement. Assessing on improvement is often a moving target. Similar to scenario 1, the criteria for meeting the rubric has to be clearly stated. Both students should get the same score. One potential consequence of not clearly stating the goal may be that the skilled students sandbag or may not perform to their best ability on the pre-test and show great gains on the post-test. In scenario 4, you are teaching an archery unit. Maria arrives for class on time and completes all the skills tests, but is not dressed for the activity. What points does Maria receive? A, Maria receives full points. B, Maria receives reduced points for failure to dress for the activity. Or C, Maria receives no points for lack of attire and cannot participate. Unless being dressed out is essential for safety for participation in the activity, and has been previously identified and tied to a benchmark, Maria should receive full points for the unit. Dressing out is a managerial concern and should be addressed through things like class rules, school policies, and be handled administratively. In scenario 5, you are administering a physical fitness test. Sue scores in the healthy fitness zone in all 6 test batteries. Chris reaches the healthy fitness zone in 2 out of the 6. How do you score their fitness test results? A, Sue receives full points for meeting all 6 in the healthy fitness zone. B, Chris receives reduced points for failure to score in the healthy fitness zone in all 6 test batteries. C, they both get the same points for completing the tests. Or D, neither receives any points. Points regarding fitness testing are related to self-assessment and planning by the student, not by test results. In this scenario, it is inappropriate to base a student's grade purely on fitness testing results. It is best practice to ask students to utilize the results of their fitness tests to set goals and make a plan to reach those goals to improve or maintain fitness levels. They can then be able to identify why or why not those goals were met after the predetermined time. Many factors other than physical activity influence physical fitness testing, such as heredity, maturation, chronological age, and factors outside of student or teacher control. Fitness gain requires time, and many programs do not provide sufficient time, which means students may be inappropriately penalized for factors related to program issues. That completes the scenario section. Next, we'll move on to creating sample assessments for a jump rope unit. This slide shows an example performance outcome for a jump rope bundle of these 6 benchmarks. The bolded portions draw attention to the content of the benchmarks, but what is also important is that the performance outcome is written so that it is easy to understand how a student would meet this outcome. Students will use correct force and speed to perform 5 different jump rope tricks chosen from a set of 10 options, including jumps of varying levels of difficulty. They will use these experiences to create their own definition of cardiorespiratory fitness and recognize the effects of consecutive jumping has on the heart and lungs. They will demonstrate responsible behaviors by remaining on task and following the safety protocols. And they will reflect on their personal experiences with challenge and enjoyment. Now let's break this performance outcome down for assessment. First, are there benchmarks that can be grouped or assessed together? In this case, yes, we will combine 2 of them. 3.1.3.16 perform a variety of jump rope skills, and 3.2.1.3 apply effort awareness concepts of speed and force. Next, we determine what part of the performance outcome is being assessed. For this, we identify students will use correct force and speed to perform 5 different jump rope tricks chosen from a set of 10 options, including jumps of varying levels of difficulty. Our 10 jump rope skill options include the skier, the bell, single side swing and jump, double swing side swing and jump, the straddle, the scissors, the straddle cross, the crossover, and full turn. Finally, we identify the assessment tool. We will use a student jump rope performance rubric. Here's a picture of what the potential jump rope rubric might look like. We are using a 3-point rubric for both benchmarks. It's critically important the scoring criteria in the rubric be clearly defined right up front and shared with the student. They need to know what developing, competent, and proficient look like. Going back to the performance assessment, determine the next benchmark for assessment. This time we choose benchmark 3.3.3.1. Define cardiorespiratory fitness and provide examples of physical activities that enhance cardiorespiratory fitness. The part of the performance outcome being assessed is that students will use these experiences to create their own definition of cardiorespiratory fitness and recognize the effects consecutive jumping has on the heart and lungs and will reflect on their personal experiences with challenge and enjoyment. The assessment tool will be a student worksheet. Here's what the student worksheet could look like. Again, it is important that a teacher identify the criteria of a 1, 2, or 3. This can be done during class or outside of class. Going back to the performance outcome, what are the remaining benchmarks to be assessed? Can they be combined in one assessment tool? For this situation, yes. We will combine benchmark 3.4.1.1, work independently, exhibit responsibility, and 3.4.5.1, move safely, using equipment in general space with minimal reminders. The part of the performance outcome is being assessed is that the students will demonstrate respectful behaviors by remaining on task and following the safety protocols. The assessment tool is a teacher observation checklist. Here's a sample teacher observation checklist. The scoring guide identifies that students should have multiple opportunities to exhibit each of the 3 behaviors. When a teacher observes the behavior, a student receives an X. This slide summarizes all the assessment tools utilized in the unit for each student. It can be shared with the students, accompanied by the details of their scores for each of the assessments. Now let's address grading the unit. Grading should be an exercise in professional judgment, not the widespread practice of simply averaging a set of scores. Physical educators should analyze the body of evidence and determine, not just calculate grades. Avoid using the mean. Consider using the median or mode. Extreme scores, particularly a 0, have a profound effect on averaging. The mean may not provide an accurate description of what a student really knows and can do. Teachers should also consider weighting components carefully to achieve the intent of the final grade. The way in which achievement results are combined generally involves weighting the different learning targets in order to reflect this intent. Here's a summary of guidelines for standards-based grading. Relate grading procedures to standards. Use criterion reference performance standards to determine grades. Limit factors included in grades to achievement. Sample student performance. Do not use all scores in grades. Keep records so they can be changed and updated regularly. Crunch numbers carefully. Avoid using the mean. Consider using the median or mode. Use quality assessments and properly record evidence of achievement. Discuss and involve students in grading. As you put together your annual plan, I highly suggest you utilize these 2 free online resources: the Online Physical Education Network, or OPEN, and Dynamic PE ASAP. Both of these sites are credible and utilize the national standards and outcomes in all their sample units. But please note that because they utilize the national standards and outcomes, you will need to adapt them to meet Minnesota benchmarks. When modules are written in grade bands such as primary, intermediate, middle school, and high school, you'll need to identify individual grade level benchmarks. These sites are also helpful as they often include module block plans, material lists, teaching cues, student cues, academic language, lesson plans, and assessments. This concludes the Year 2 Standards Implementation video series. Stay tuned to the MDE and MnShape websites for announcements on Year 3 professional development opportunities. Special thanks to the members of the MDE Physical Education Standards Implementation Team for the development of the content and for their continued guidance in supporting quality physical education in Minnesota. A reminder that the foundational videos on standard implementation are covered in the Snapshots Physical Education Standards video series, and all Year 2 videos can be found on the MnShape and MDE websites. Thank you.